It never occurred to me that a physician's pronouncement could irrevocably alter the course of my existence. It was a standard Tuesday, the 14th of July, a day destined to be etched into my consciousness as both the culmination of an era and the genesis of a new one. I had simply accompanied my daughter-in-law, Leah, to her concluding prenatal examination at the esteemed Women's Health Centre within St. Jude's Hospital. We were filled with eager anticipation for the arrival of our first grandchild. It felt as though a fresh chapter for our family was commencing, replete with the promise of joyful children's laughter and the solace of shared companionship. However, when Dr. Evans grasped my forearm within that stark examination chamber and implored, "Depart this place at once and initiate divorce proceedings," I understood with chilling certainty that my 40-year-long marital foundation, my meticulously constructed edifice of cards, had just imploded. It was as if a solitary declaration had destabilized the very bedrock of my being. I remained rooted to the spot, rendered speechless, my heart hammering against my ribs as if seeking escape, my mind recoiling from the stark harshness of the truth. Dr. Evans, a man in his 50s, possessed kind eyes, yet in that moment they were clouded with profound distress. He had adopted a look of horror while observing the ultrasound imagery. He had meticulously reviewed the readings on multiple occasions, his brow furrowed in deep concentration, and an ominous premonition washed over me. "Mrs. Albright," he uttered, his voice trembling, barely a whisper that pierced the room's silence. "I must speak with you privately, immediately." Leah, seemingly unaware of the gravity of the situation on the examination table, turned to me, her brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right, Mum? Is there a problem with the baby?" I could only manage a strained smile as Dr. Evans decisively guided me into an adjacent smaller room. What unfolded before me on that screen stole my breath and shattered my naive perception of reality into countless fragments. The data simply did not align. The fetal heart rate, the size, the developmental progress, everything indicated an advanced gestational stage that was utterly incongruous with the timeline Leah had consistently provided. The infant my daughter-in-law was carrying could not possibly be my son Ethan's. The figures were preposterous, absurd, and outright affront. Ethan had been away on a business excursion precisely during the period this child must have been conceived. He had been abroad for weeks, spearheading a critical company initiative, and the timelines simply did not intersect. I felt the very ground beneath me vanish. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. "Mrs. Albright," the physician stated, his voice strained, his eyes conveying a pity I could scarcely endure. "This infant is 8.5 months along. Your son was out of the country 9 months ago. I personally treated your husband, Mr. Warren, when he sustained a back injury exactly 9 months ago, and he was recuperated here at the hospital. The diagnostic data aligns perfectly. The unique nature of your husband's spinal injury is distinctive, and I distinctly recall the precise timing." And there it was, the brutal truth, cold, unyielding, and devastating, a wound to my heart far deeper than any physical trauma. Warren, my husband, my partner of 4 decades, was the biological father. My mind rebelled against this conclusion. My life, my marriage, my family, all of it was an elaborate deception. My husband, my daughter-in-law, and the grandchild who was not my grandchild, but rather the product of an abhorrent infidelity. In that instant, I comprehended that the $3 million in real estate registered in my name, my residence in Beverly Hills, my properties in Malibu, by Lake Tahoe, and in the Hamptons, everything I had diligently accumulated over decades, was now imperiled. This was not merely a betrayal of affection, but a calculated, ruthless assault on my life's entire endeavor. They had orchestrated this insidious scheme, this elaborate intrigue designed to defraud and dispossess me. They intended for me to embrace this infant as my legitimate grandchild, thereby paving the way for them to claim my inheritance. They presumed me to be a credulous elderly woman whose resolve would soften with the impending arrival of a child. However, what Mr. Warren and Leah failed to realize was that I, Sophia Albright, had not achieved considerable success through naivety, and what I was now contemplating would utterly dismantle their lives. The pain was almost unbearable, yet from the wreckage of my heart an unshakable resolve began to coalesce. I did not return to our home that evening. I offered them no explanation. I simply vanished. My departure was not an act of evasion, but rather the initial strategic maneuver in a game they had long initiated without my awareness. While they likely engaged in a frantic search for me, perhaps fearing the unraveling of their plot, I dedicated 3 months to devising the most exquisite form of retribution. Follow my narrative to its conclusion and share the city from which you are observing me, thereby demonstrating the reach of my story. My name is Sophia Albright. I am 65 years of age, and for 40 years I harbored the conviction of possessing a flawless marriage. How profoundly mistaken I was. My life was a fabrication, an intricately constructed house of cards that had now collapsed with a single gust of wind. And from beneath its ruins, I discovered the fortitude to rebuild. I encountered Warren when I was merely 25, a youthful woman brimming with aspirations and dreams, her heart yearning for love and adventure. He presented himself as an ambitious, diligent man who pledged me the world, promising to deliver the very stars, and I, embodying the role of a dutiful American wife, bestowed upon him my complete devotion. My youth, my aspirations, my inherited fortune. I was no ordinary woman. My father, may he rest in peace, a man of wisdom and foresight, had bequeathed to me properties in the most sought-after locales across the nation, in Malibu, in the Hamptons, and by Lake Tahoe. Real estate valued at over $3 million in today's market. However, in those early days, Warren persuaded me that he could manage them more effectively. "Sophia, my dearest," he declared, his smile disarmingly charming, a facade I now recognize as manipulative, a mask behind which avarice concealed itself. "Women lack understanding of commerce, entrust it all to me. And I, like a naive fool, a woman utterly devoted to love, placed my faith in him. I registered everything under both our names, every deed, every document bearing our joint signatures, symbolizing what we believed to be our unity and partnership, a union that would ultimately prove illusory. For 4 decades I toiled relentlessly, day and night, to enhance this inheritance, while he immersed himself in his business engagements, which, as I subsequently discovered, often served as opportunities for indulgence and excess, frequently accompanied by readily available women in disreputable establishments. I managed the rental properties, oversaw construction projects, and collected the rents. I would awaken at 5 in the morning to prepare breakfast for Warren and Ethan, often serving it with a smile that belied my exhaustion and the growing void within me. Subsequently, I would hasten to the properties to supervise the workmen, scrutinizing every minute detail. I meticulously examined every dollar that flowed in and out with a precision he never possessed. Upon returning home, I was expected to prepare meals, maintain the household, and attend to my family's needs, as if I had not labored throughout the day. "Sophia," Warren would remark upon his late arrivals, emanating the scent of inexpensive perfume, his attire rumpled, a weary yet often guilt-laden smile gracing his lips, which I then misinterpreted as a testament to his arduous efforts. "You cannot comprehend the pressures I face at work. I require your greater understanding." I believed him. I strived to be understanding, sacrificing my own desires, my own dreams for his comfort and for the facade of a harmonious family life. My son, Ethan, was born when I was 28. From his earliest moments, this child represented the very light of my existence, the sole genuine ray of sunshine in my often somber daily routine. I virtually raised him single-handedly, as Warren was perpetually occupied with significant commitments that kept him away from home, often until the late hours of the night. Ethan grew up witnessing his mother's struggles to maintain the family's financial stability. He observed my silent sacrifices. I financed his attendance at the finest educational institutions, including a prestigious private university where he earned a master's degree in business administration, all funded by the revenue I generated in managing the properties. Warren reaped the accolades, but I performed the labor. He presented himself as the successful entrepreneur who had constructed the enterprise, while I operated discreetly behind the scenes, invisible and underestimated, a silent champion whose efforts went unacknowledged. When Ethan married Leah 3 years prior, my joy was boundless. Finally, I believed I would have the daughter I had always yearned for. Leah was endearing, affectionate, consistently addressing me as "dear mum," and embracing me as if I were her own mother, her lost haven. "Mrs. Albright," she confided, her eyes glistening with tears, "you are the mother I always envisioned. My own parents abandoned me at 15, but with you I feel like I belong to a true family." I opened the doors of my home and my heart to her. I offered her a position in real estate management with a monthly remuneration of $2,500. I imparted my comprehensive knowledge of the family business, hoping to find a worthy successor and a confidant with whom I could share the burdens of my life. I even bestowed upon her my mother's exquisite pearl necklace, an heirloom of immeasurable sentimental value, so that she might feel an integral part of the family, a token of my profound affection and unwavering trust. Warren appeared delighted with Leah, consistently commending her and speaking glowingly of her intellect and diligence. "What a wonderful girl we have acquired as a daughter-in-law, Sophia," he would exclaim. "Ethan possesses impeccable taste. She is intelligent, industrious, and it is evident she cherishes you dearly." Throughout those 3 years, I noticed peculiar occurrences, minor discrepancies, yet I largely dismissed them. Warren's late arrivals home, often accompanied by increasingly convoluted work-related explanations. Leah occasionally possessed insights into the business that I had not shared with her, confidential information known only to me. They exchanged glances that conveyed more than mere familial warmth. However, I rationalized it as a developing bond between them, a father-daughter-in-law relationship. I suppressed any untoward thoughts, utterly convinced of the impregnability of my family, a steadfast rock against life's tempests. One instance, I discovered a receipt from an upscale restaurant, the Ivy, in Warren's pocket, a venue he frequented exclusively with significant business associates. The bill amounted to $350 for a dinner for two. Upon inquiry, he responded, "That was with a crucial client, Sophia. Please do not concern yourself with such trivialities." His explanation was far too smooth, far too swift, yet I desperately wished to believe it, to preserve domestic tranquility. The previous year, when Leah announced her pregnancy, Warren exhibited such profound excitement that he actually wept tears of joy. "Finally, I am going to be a grandfather," he proclaimed throughout the house, an outburst of enthusiasm that deeply touched me. Ethan was ecstatic, and I commenced hand-knitting garments for my future grandchild, each stitch infused with love and anticipation, crafting a small blanket adorned with tiny bears and stars. Now, however, everything fell into place with chilling clarity. The knowing glances, the hushed conversations that ceased abruptly upon my entry, Warren's business trips that suspiciously coincided with Elia's absences when Ethan was occupied. It was a horrifying realization that gradually enveloped my spirit like a venomous web, threatening to suffocate me. For 40 years, I had performed the role of the perfect wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I managed operations, and I toiled incessantly to build our family's prosperity. I sacrificed my own dreams so that they might live in comfort, and they in turn perceived me as an aged, foolish woman whom they could easily dupe. The disdain in their eyes was now as stark as daylight, a blinding flash of lightning. However, there was a crucial element that Warren and Leia had overlooked, a concealed asset that would permanently alter their malevolent scheme, a secret weapon I had meticulously honed over decades. The months following the pregnancy announcement felt akin to an elaborate theatrical production in which I was the sole individual unaware of the script. Warren underwent a subtle yet consistent transformation. Previously, he would at least feign interest when I discussed property-related issues, tenant disputes, or renovation expenses. Now, he would curtly interrupt me. "Sophia, I'm weary. Can you not resolve these matters independently? You possess ample experience, do you not?" A profoundly hurtful indifference that echoed within me, a sense of worthlessness that settled heavily upon my heart. One afternoon in March, as I was meticulously reviewing financial records in my study, I overheard laughter emanating from the living room. I crept out and observed Warren and Leah seated intimately on the sofa, engrossed in something on their mobile device. Their heads were close together, their hands touching. "How amusing," Warren remarked, a smile gracing his lips, a smile I had not seen directed at me in years, a smile imbued with tenderness and joy. As I approached, Leia swiftly concealed the device, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, Mum, we were simply watching some baby videos on YouTube. I'm so thrilled about this pregnancy." Yet, I had witnessed enough to know it was not merely baby videos. It was a WhatsApp conversation peppered with red hearts, a betrayal that seared itself into my memory, a deep, piercing wound to my heart. The expenditures began to deviate from the norm. Warren, who had always been notoriously frugal, even regarding casual dining, suddenly incurred inexplicable expenses. "Warren?" I inquired one evening, scrutinizing the bank statements and noting a peculiar charge. "What is this $1,500 transaction at a jeweler named Sparkle Gem?" "Ah, that," he responded without lifting the newspaper he ostentatiously held before his face. "I acquired some earrings for Leia. She is pregnant. She deserves to feel cherished. $1,500 for earrings for my daughter-in-law. He had not even presented me with a flower for our most recent wedding anniversary, let alone a piece of jewelry. However, what truly amplified my concern were the clandestine rendezvous. One afternoon, I returned home earlier than anticipated from collecting rental income in the Hamptons. The house was unnervingly silent, an eerie stillness that sent shivers down my spine. I proceeded upstairs to locate Warren and discovered him in his study, engaged in a hushed telephone conversation. His voice was muffled, yet I could discern fragmented phrases. "Do not fret, my dear. She suspects nothing. Within a few months, once the infant arrives, everything will be resolved. Then we shall be free." Upon noticing me, he abruptly terminated the call, his hand visibly trembling. It was Ethan. He lied brazenly, his complexion paling to an ashen hue. "We were discussing business matters." "Ethan?" I questioned, bewildered, my heart pounding erratically. "But Ethan is in San Francisco until tomorrow. I just spoke with him on the phone." He turned scarlet, his gaze darting nervously from side to side. "Oh yes, I misspoke. It was the accountant, Mr. Davies." The torrent of falsehoods intensified, and a cold, repulsive sensation congealed in my stomach. Laya's behavior grew increasingly erratic. During the initial weeks of her pregnancy, she had been exceptionally attentive to me, soliciting my advice and accompanying me everywhere, embodying the affectionate daughter I had always desired. However, as the months progressed, she became more aloof, almost dismissive. Her gaze consistently avoided mine. "Mom," she remarked one day while I was preparing her favorite dish, the macaroni and cheese she adored. "Please don't go to so much trouble for me anymore. I can manage on my own. I don't require constant attention." "But my dear," I responded, "it is my first grandchild. I wish to ensure you have everything you need, that you are well." "It's just," she hesitated momentarily, her fingers nervously toying with the hem of her dress. "Sometimes I feel you are rather intense. I need my personal space. I am an adult." Intense? I, who had opened my home and my heart to her as if she were my own daughter. Matters deteriorated further when I realized Laya was privy to business information she should not have possessed. One day, she casually mentioned that the tenant at the Malibu building would be delinquent with the rent. "How do you know that?" I inquired, taken aback, as I had not yet disclosed this information to anyone. "He simply called me this morning." "Oh, Mom, I don't recall where I heard it. With the pregnancy, my mind is so muddled." But I knew it was a fabrication. I had received that call privately in my bedroom, with the door closed, intending to handle the matter discreetly. She had obtained that information from Warren. I was absolutely certain. Warren's return home became progressively later. His justifications grew more elaborate and implausible. I had to remain quite late to review some contracts, he would claim, arriving home at 11 in the evening, reeking of women's perfume, a cheap fragrance that was not mine. There was a business dinner with Japanese investors that extended considerably, he explained on another occasion, arriving at 2 in the morning, his shirt creased and his eyes red-rimmed. It was a poorly staged play they were performing, and I was the unwilling audience, meticulously noting each of their deceptions with icy composure. One night in June I could endure it no longer. The oppressive weight of the lies and betrayal crushed me. When Warren arrived home at 1 in the morning, I confronted him, my voice steady and resolute. "Warren," I stated with unwavering vocalization, "I require an explanation for what is transpiring here. You are arriving home late each night, expending funds on undisclosed matters, and you are behaving as though I am a stranger in my own home." He regarded me with a coldness that chilled my very blood. His eyes were devoid of emotion. "Sophia," he declared with palpable contempt, his tone cutting me to the core, "you are exhibiting paranoia. These are the delusions of an aged, uninteresting woman who has nothing more engaging to occupy her time than baseless worries. If you are dissatisfied with the manner in which I conduct my life, that is your personal concern." Aged, uninteresting woman, after 40 years of marriage, after jointly forging an empire valued at $3 million, he addressed me in such a fashion. Anger surged within me, but I suppressed it. A cold, calculated strategy began to crystallize in my mind. I understood that the moment for direct confrontation had not yet arrived. However, what truly fractured my heart was the incident at Laya's baby shower. I had meticulously organized a magnificent celebration in the garden of our estate, complete with white marquees and fresh floral arrangements. I extended invitations to all my friends and the entire family. 80 guests assembled to partake in the festivities. I procured the most opulent decorations available, including a custom-designed cake adorned with miniature baby figures, and even engaged a jazz ensemble. I desired my daughter-in-law to feel like royalty, to fully savor this extraordinary moment, just as I would have wished for my own daughter. During the celebration, I observed Warren and Leah repeatedly retreating to the kitchen under the guise of replenishing supplies. I followed them to ascertain if they required assistance, and discovered them locked in an embrace, whispering in each other's ears, their faces mere inches apart. "It won't be much longer, my love," I heard Warren murmur, his voice suffused with a tenderness he had not evinced towards me in a considerable period. Once our son is born, everything will transform. We shall no longer need to maintain this pretense. Our son, we shall no longer need to maintain this pretense. They hastily separated upon perceiving my presence, their faces flushed with embarrassment. Leah even exhibited tears, yet they stemmed not from sorrow but from exhilaration, from the anticipation of a liberated existence alongside my husband. "Mom," she stammered with a disingenuous smile that failed to reach her eyes. I was simply so overcome with emotion, I began to cry. Mr. Warren was comforting me. That night, sleep eluded me. For the first time in 40 years of marriage, the disparate pieces of the puzzle coalesced into a devastatingly clear picture, a mosaic of utter betrayal. But what they remained unaware of was that I possessed resources far beyond their wildest imaginations, and very soon they would discover that they had chosen the wrong woman to deceive, a woman who was not merely a wife, but also a seasoned businesswoman. The revelation at the hospital struck me like a colossal hammer blow, yet paradoxically it felt like awakening from a 40-year-long nightmare. After my hasty departure from the hospital, I did not proceed home. I could not yet bear to confront them. I needed to collect my thoughts. I needed to process the magnitude of what I had uncovered, that colossal edifice of deceit and betrayal. I drove directly to the opulent Hotel Bel Air in Los Angeles and secured a suite for a week, a sanctuary of solitude and quiet reflection. This enforced isolation was imperative for me to organize my thoughts, to acknowledge my pain, and to formulate a strategy as precise as a surgeon's incision. During those initial days, I wept as I had not wept since the passing of my beloved father. The tears flowed incessantly, each droplet a testament to my shattered heart, my dashed hopes. I felt hollow, utterly betrayed. My spirit was rent asunder. However, once I had exhausted my capacity for tears, a profound shift occurred within me. The sorrow metamorphosed into a cold, calculated fury, an unyielding determination far more potent than any injury. I contacted my son, Ethan, who was still in San Francisco and remained entirely oblivious to the unfolding drama. "My son," I informed him, my voice steady, though my heart still trembled, "I require you in Los Angeles without delay. Something exceptionally serious is transpiring concerning your wife. It is urgent." "What has happened, Mum? Is the baby all right?" Ethan inquired, his voice laced with apprehension and bewilderment. "Ethan," my words cut through the air with an unyielding finality, leaving no room for debate. "That infant is not yours." The ensuing silence on the other end of the line stretched into an immeasurable void, a quiet more deafening than any outcry, a stillness that shattered his entire world. "Mum, what are you implying? Are you feeling all right? Are you unwell?" "Son, I implore you, place your trust in me. Journey to Los Angeles, but do not venture home. Seek me out at the Bear Suite Hotel, room 120, and disclose not a single detail to Leah or your father. Absolutely nothing." Ethan materialized that very evening, a picture of bewilderment and apprehension, his gaze a tempest of unspoken inquiries. As I meticulously unraveled the entirety of my discoveries, every sordid thread of their deception, I witnessed his reality disintegrate, mirroring the devastation of my own. He slumped into a chair, his complexion ashen. "This is inconceivable, Mother," he choked out, tears welling, his voice cracking. Lila cherishes me. We've been united for 3 years. We're anticipating our firstborn. Ethan, I began, gently taking his hands, which felt chillingly clammy. The data is incontrovertible. You were stationed on the East Coast for the entire month of February, engaged in the company project. This child's conception aligns precisely with the period of your absence. That is a mathematical certainty. I presented him with the medical records I had covertly procured from the facility, the sonographic imagery, the diagnostic reports. The figures were unassailable. The evidence was overwhelming. Yet the deepest wound was the dawning betrayal, reflected in my son's eyes as he finally conceded to the brutal truth, swallowing the bitter draught. My own father, he whispered, his voice barely a breath. How could he inflict such perfidy upon us? How could he betray me, his very flesh and blood, in this manner? My son, I affirmed, my voice regaining its strength. I grasp it all now. Your father and Leia have orchestrated this scheme for a considerable duration, this insidious plot, but there's an element they've overlooked, a crucial detail they haven't factored into their calculations. Ethan regarded me with a look of utter confusion, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. What is it, Mother? What recourse do we possess? My dearest son, I continued, throughout these many years, while your father basked in the glory of our accomplishments, I assiduously safeguarded our legal documentation. All of our primary assets are registered solely under my name. Your father has never truly comprehended the intricate structure of our wealth. How is that conceivable? He questioned, bewildered. Father always maintained that everything was jointly registered, a shared endeavor. Ethan, your father genuinely believes that. However, when I inherited your grandfather's considerable estates, my own father imparted a piece of wisdom that has remained etched in my memory. He cautioned, my daughter, never place all your faith in your husband's name. Men are transient, but the land endures eternally as yours. Place your trust judiciously, never blindly. I elucidated the meticulous manner in which I had managed our affairs for 4 decades. While Warren oversaw the day-to-day operations of the businesses, I meticulously handled the legal intricacies, the labyrinthine complexities of ownership. With every acquisition, every document renewal, I ensured its registration was unequivocally and solely in my name. The properties nestled in Malibu, now valued at $1.5 million, are documented in my name alone. The apartment complex situated by Lake Tahoe, appraised at $800,000. Furthermore, the commercial establishments in the Hamptons, worth $700,000, are likewise registered solely under my ownership. Ethan stared, his jaw slack with disbelief. But Mother, Father has no inkling of this. He will be utterly astonished. Your father is convinced he commands absolute control, the entirety of our empire. Yet in reality, his access is confined to the operational accounts, the flow of incoming and outgoing funds, the deeds, the titles. Everything resides within my safekeeping, meticulously secured. I revealed the compact yet formidable safe I had transported to the hotel. Within its confines lay the original deeds, 40 years of meticulously preserved documentation attesting to Sophia Albright's undisputed dominion over the family's vast enterprise. Moreover, I informed Ethan, there is another crucial detail they remain oblivious to. 5 years ago, upon reaching my 60th birthday, I formalized my will. Every asset is bequeathed to you, my sole legitimate heir. However, I stipulated a very precise codicil. What codicil, Mother? Ethan inquired, his anticipation palpable. Should I ever ascertain your father's infidelity, he forfeits all entitlement to the properties, effective immediately. Furthermore, should you father children outside of our union or engage in any form of familial deception, your own inheritance is likewise nullified. The clause is absolute and impenetrable. Ethan's face paled, his eyes widening in alarm. Mother, that implies that. That means, my son, that your father and Leah conspired to pilfer that which was never theirs. And when the truth surfaces, they will be utterly destitute, stripped of every last cent. Yet the most significant revelation I imparted to Ethan was my meticulously crafted strategy. My son, I declared, my voice resonating with unwavering resolve. Throughout these intervening years, I have diligently amassed funds in discreet accounts, small sums here and there, entirely unbeknownst to your father. I possess nearly $200,000 in accessible capital that your father never suspected existed. This is revenue generated from rental income and my personal investments, a contingency fund for unforeseen exigencies. For what purpose, Mother? Why did you take such measures? Precisely for this juncture, to ensure my complete autonomy, my freedom from their deceit and treachery. Ethan gazed at me with a profound admixture of awe and astonishment, as though perceiving me anew. Mother, did you foresee this possibility? Did you harbor suspicions? My son, a woman who navigates 40 years of marital complexities, must always remain prepared for the gravest eventualities. Your father, in his arrogance, never conceived that the seemingly docile matriarch, the dutiful homemaker, was also a shrewd businesswoman keenly observing his every transgression. That evening, Ethan and I meticulously devised our approach to navigating this intricate situation. However, our immediate priority was the acquisition of further evidence that would utterly annihilate their credibility, rendering any legal defense futile. My son, I instructed him, we shall now engage in their own game, but we shall emerge victorious and with undeniable flair. The subsequent 3 months proved to be the most arduous of my existence, yet paradoxically, the most profoundly gratifying. The necessity of feigning ignorance while orchestrating my meticulously planned retribution demanded a reservoir of fortitude I never knew I possessed. Ethan and I seamlessly reintegrated into our domestic environment, projecting an aura of normalcy as if no disruption had occurred. We informed Warren and Leah that I had experienced a severe emotional strain, exacerbated by the anticipation of the pregnancy, necessitating a brief period of recuperation. "Oh, Mother!" Leah exclaimed, embracing me with an overly effusive gesture, her arms constricting with a simulated warmth. I was so terribly concerned for your well-being. Mr. Warren and I were at a complete loss as to what to do. We were so distressed. I offered a smile that concealed the profound revulsion churning within me. This woman, who addressed me as Mother with such manufactured affection, had been ensconced in an illicit affair with my husband for months, a devastating betrayal. "Do not trouble yourselves," I reassured them. "I am feeling considerably better. My sole desire is to embrace the imminent arrival of my grandchild and savor this precious interlude." The profound irony of my words was exquisitely delicious. They harbored the deluded notion that I had accepted the infant as my legitimate grandchild. Their insidious plan appeared to be unfolding precisely as they had envisioned. They remained blissfully unaware of the impending storm, the concealed ordnance I had strategically placed beneath them. The initial phase of my strategy involved the meticulous accumulation of irrefutable evidence. Ethan became my invaluable confederate. Given Leah's complete trust in him, he could probe with impunity, devoid of raising suspicion. "My dearest," Ethan addressed Leah one evening during dinner, as we all partook in the meal together, "I've been contemplating that once the baby arrives, we should perhaps arrange for a paternity verification. This would streamline the process of documenting everything for mother's inheritance, ensuring all legalities are impeccably in order. I observed Lyra blanch, her fork clattering audibly against her plate. For what reason? You are the father, Ethan. Why entertain such doubts? That is an affront. I harbour no doubts, my love, but my mother possesses substantial assets, and we must meticulously document all particulars to preempt any future complications. It is merely a procedural formality, a bureaucratic necessity. Warren, seated adjacent to me, nearly choked on his water, his face flushing a deep crimson. I do not believe that is necessary, he interjected hastily, his voice thin and reedy. Such a procedure would entail needless expenditures and a lamentable waste of time. Oh, Warren, I countered, my smile a delicate veil, betraying none of the tempestuous rage churning within. But when it pertains to securing our grandchild's rightful inheritance, every effort is surely warranted. Would you not agree? After all, we aspire to provide the absolute best for the infant. Warren's countenance contorted into a grotesque tableau, yet he found himself unable to voice an objection without invoking suspicion. He was ensnared within his own carefully constructed web. Concurrently, I commenced executing my clandestine maneuvers. I engaged the services of Los Angeles's preeminent private investigator, a man named Marcus Reynolds, a former police detective boasting 2 decades of experience, renowned for his discretion and unparalleled efficiency. Mrs. Albright, he stated during our initial rendezvous, conducted in a discreet establishment within the Grand Central Market, deliberately chosen to evade any prying eyes. I require every conceivable detail, dates, times, any peculiar behavior, any observation that has piqued your suspicion. I provided him with an exhaustive compilation of every anomaly I had detected in recent months, a meticulously detailed chronological account of the pervasive infidelity. Marcus assured me that within 2 weeks he would furnish photographic evidence and documentary proof of their illicit liaison. However, Mrs. Albright, he cautioned with an expression of grave sobriety, you must brace yourself emotionally. The discoveries we unearth will be profoundly distressing, even with your existing suspicions. Mr. Reynolds, I responded, my voice steady and unwavering, the pain has already been inflicted. Now my sole pursuit is justice without compromise. While Marcus diligently pursued his investigation, I maintained my facade of domestic tranquility. Each morning I prepared breakfast for Warren and Lyra, my smile a bitter offering. I observed them as they partook, blissfully unaware that as they plotted my undoing, I was simultaneously, meticulously orchestrating theirs. Sophia, Warren remarked one morning while leisurely sipping his coffee. I've been considering that once the baby arrives, we might benefit from a strategic reorganization of our familial finances to facilitate smoother management. It would be exceptionally practical if we were to implement certain modifications. What nature of reorganization do you envision? I inquired, feigning an innocence that belied my keen observation of his reaction. Well, perhaps we could consider transferring some of our properties to Ethan and Lyra. This would preempt any potential future inheritance complications. It seems a logical step, wouldn't you concur? I smiled warmly as I refilled his coffee cup. Indeed, my dearest, whatever you deem most beneficial, provided it contributes to familial harmony. Internally, however, a tempest of fury raged. So, this was their endgame, to manipulate me into signing over property deeds, thereby expediting their scheme, and subsequently to dispose of me, discarding me like an antiquated, superfluous relic. Lyra, too, began to escalate her own machinations. One afternoon, as I was meticulously organizing a collection of infant attire, diminutive onesies and charming little caps. She casually remarked, "Mother, once the baby is born, I believe it would be most advantageous if Ethan and I relocated to a more spacious residence. This house feels rather confined for a burgeoning family. We require greater accommodation for ourselves and the infant." "Relocate?" I queried, feigning surprise. "But this dwelling boasts 5 bedrooms, a capacious kitchen, and a magnificent garden. There is an abundance of space." "Well, Mr. Warren and you will undoubtedly desire your own peace and quiet, and we, as a young family, necessitate our personal space. You understand, privacy." "How conveniently opportune," I mused inwardly, "to orchestrate Ethan's departure from the household, thereby enabling Warren and her to openly conduct their clandestine affair without my watchful gaze." "Naturally, my dear daughter," I responded, my smile imbued with a sweetness as potent as any poison. "When the opportune moment arises, we shall explore all feasible options, all in due time." Meanwhile, Marcus Reynolds furnished me with weekly dispatches that corroborated my most dire apprehensions, illuminating the sordid truth with stark clarity. "Mrs. Albright," he informed me during one of our clandestine meetings at an unassuming cafe, "your husband and your daughter-in-law convene thrice weekly at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, invariably occupying the same suite, room 2074. I possess photographic evidence of their ingress and egress, their embraces, their clandestine kisses, even their hands clasped as they traverse the corridor." He proceeded to display the photographs. Witnessing Warren, the man with whom I had shared 40 years of my existence, entwined in an intimate embrace with the woman I had embraced as my own daughter, was a deeply shattering experience, yet simultaneously profoundly liberating. Certainty at last had been attained. "There is more," Marcus continued. "I have been assiduously tracking their financial transactions. Your husband has been systematically diverting funds from the operational accounts into a newly established account, opened precisely 6 months ago. It is a joint venture, accessible solely by him and Leah, a clandestine financial partnership." "What is the aggregate sum?" I demanded, my voice an icy blade. "To date, $80,000, transferred in modest increments on a weekly basis to circumvent suspicion. This represents a calculated act of systematic embezzlement. They were not merely betraying me on an emotional plane, they were also actively pilfering my diligently accumulated wealth, defrauding me of my hard-earned assets." "Marcus," I stated, my resolve hardening, "it is imperative that you ascertain the complete details pertaining to this account. I require a comprehensive record of every dollar they have diverted and its intended application, every solitary transaction." A week later, Marcus presented me with an exhaustive report, a substantial dossier brimming with irrefutable evidence. Warren and Leah had been engaged in this elaborate deception for over a year. This audacious perfidy. They had appropriated the illicitly obtained funds to secure opulent residences, procure extravagant furnishings, and even make a substantial down payment on a property in Santa Monica, their clandestine sanctuary. "Mrs. Albright," Marcus observed, "their intention is to cohabitate following the infant's arrival. They have constructed a parallel existence, funded by your magnanimity, a life lived in the shadow of your generosity." However, the most astonishing revelation was contained within the final document he presented. "I discovered this discarded in the hotel's refuse," he explained, proffering a crumpled piece of paper redolent with the scent of expensive perfume. It was a missive penned by my daughter-in-law to my husband. The note read, "My dearest, liberation is nigh. Once our son is born and the elderly matriarch relinquishes the documents, we shall openly embrace our life together. I am utterly fatigued by this charade of affection. She is so remarkably naive, so readily deceived by our every utterance. As I absorbed the chilling words, a searing pain as if a dagger had pierced my very chest convulsed me. The agony was almost unbearable, yet it was overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of icy retribution, but concurrently a different sensation ignited within me, the fervent inferno of vengeance burning hot and implacable through my veins. "Marcus," I declared, carefully refolding the note, my hands remarkably steady. "Now I require your assistance for the subsequent phase of my stratagem." "And what might that entail, Mrs. Albright?" I offered a smile, the first genuine smile to grace my lips in months, a smile tinged with bitterness yet firm in its resolve. "We shall grant them precisely what they yearn to believe, and then we shall systematically dismantle them, piece by agonizing piece." The ensuing days were pivotal in orchestrating my flawless vengeance, for what Warren and Leah failed to comprehend was that their unsuspecting elderly matriarch had meticulously prepared a surprise they would eternally regret. The day I had fervently anticipated finally arrived. Leah delivered on September 15th, precisely as the medical professionals had prognosticated. A beautiful infant boy, officially documented as my grandson. Warren was ecstatic. He regaled the hospital staff with pronouncements of his grandson, his pride palpable. "Sophia, we are now grandparents. Behold the magnificence of our grandson. He possesses my eyes." Ethan flawlessly executed his role, feigning an enthusiastic demeanor as he cradled the infant who was not his offspring, his countenance a mask of manufactured joy. "Mother," he conveyed, "is he not perfection? A veritable blessing." "Indeed, my son," I replied, my smile strained. "He is precisely as anticipated, a fine young boy." Throughout Leah's 3-day hospital stay, Warren was a constant fixture, practically residing there. He occupied an adjacent room, remaining perpetually by her side. "I am simply overcome with excitement," he explained with a casual shrug. "I cannot bear to be separated from my grandson. He is utterly captivating." His grandson, rather his son. He was already envisioning christenings, grand celebrations. Upon our return home with the infant, I convened a family gathering to commemorate the arrival of our newest member. Ethan was, of course, included, as was Marcus Reynolds, whom I introduced as the family attorney, tasked with navigating the intricate inheritance documentation. "Family," I announced as we were all assembled in the opulent drawing room, the baby peacefully slumbering in Leah's arms. I wished to seize this exceptionally opportune moment to impart some significant announcements that pertain to us all. Warren and Leah occupied the sofa together, she cradling the infant. They appeared exceedingly comfortable, demonstrably joyous, and utterly triumphant. They possessed no inkling of the impending deluge I was poised to unleash. "Firstly," I continued, my voice clear and resonant, "I desire you to be cognizant of my profound concern regarding the future security of our familial assets. Consequently, I have rendered some pivotal decisions to definitively resolve all matters." "What precisely are these decisions?" Warren inquired, his interest piqued, his eyes gleaming with avarice. "Well, my dearest," I responded, "after 40 years of marriage, I firmly believe the time has arrived to recalibrate our financial structure, precisely as you so thoughtfully suggested, to streamline operations." I observed his eyes widen with eager anticipation. He mistakenly believed I was on the verge of relinquishing ownership of properties to facilitate his nefarious agenda, of surrendering the reins of control. "Marcus," I addressed the detective, who was observing the scene with quiet composure from a secluded corner, "would you be so kind as to elucidate the present financial standing of our assets, To Warren and Leah. Marcus opened his briefcase, extracting a sheaf of documents which he meticulously arranged on the coffee table. Certainly, Mrs. Albright, he confirmed, his voice professional and unperturbed. Following a comprehensive examination of all familial documentation and property deeds, I can unequivocally assert that Mrs. Sophia Albright stands as the sole and rightful proprietor of all principal real estate holdings. Warren's brow furrowed, his expression darkening perceptibly. Pardon me, sole proprietress? That is preposterous. All assets are jointly registered under both our names. We painstakingly constructed this enterprise together. I regret to inform you, sir, that such is not the case, Marcus stated, his gaze unwavering. The properties situated in Malibu, with an estimated valuation of $1.5 million, are registered exclusively under Mrs. Albright's designation. The apartment complex located by Lake Tahoe, valued at $800,000. Furthermore, the commercial establishments in the Hamptons, appraised at $700,000. I am in possession of the original deeds here, which unequivocally substantiate these claims. Warren's face drained of all colour, rendering him ghastly pale. This is impossible. I have overseen these businesses for decades. I was the paramount figurehead of this company. You manage the operational aspects? Yes, I acknowledged, a smile spreading across my lips, a smile that seemed to taunt him. But you were never the owner, Warren. I ensured that from the very inception. My father instilled in me the virtue of foresight. Leah began to exhibit signs of palpable agitation, her fingers tightening their grip on the infant. But that is inconsequential, is it not? You are married. What belongs to one inherently belongs to the other. That is the established legal precedent. Oh, Leah, how remarkably naive you are, I chided, my voice now as sharp as a honed blade. Marcus, would you kindly enlighten my dear daughter-in-law on the prevailing legal statutes in the United States concerning divorce proceedings predicated upon infidelity? Marcus cleared his throat. In instances where irrefutable evidence of adultery is presented, the culpability of the transgressor results in the forfeiture of all claims to the assets of the wronged spouse. The unfaithful partner possesses no legal recourse whatsoever to assert any entitlement to the other's property. Divorce? Warren bellowed, leaping abruptly from his chair. What are you implying, Sophia? Why would we even broach the subject of divorce? That is utterly absurd. Oh, Warren, I responded, a smile I had rigorously suppressed for months finally manifesting, a smile brimming with profound, bitter satisfaction. Seriously, do you genuinely perceive me as so utterly foolish? Do you truly believe I have remained oblivious to your transgressions? I rose from my seat and moved towards the television. Marcus, would you be so kind as to display the photographic evidence you meticulously gathered for Warren and Leah? I believe there are several aspects they ought to thoroughly examine. Certainly, Mrs. Albright. I activated the television and Marcus seamlessly connected his laptop. The initial image to materialize on the expansive 65-inch screen depicted Warren and Leah engaged in a passionate embrace at the entrance of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, their bodies intimately entwined. A collective gasp rippled through the room. My heavens! Ethan exclaimed, perfectly embodying the role of the betrayed son, his eyes wide with feigned indignation. Father, how could you possibly perpetrate such a betrayal? Wait, I commanded, my voice firm. There is more to observe. This is merely the prelude. The subsequent photograph revealed Warren and Leah entering and exiting the hotel on various dates, their arms encircling one another, their hands clasped, exhibiting the overt affections of a clandestine romantic liaison. Warren staggered to his feet, trembling uncontrollably, his complexion now a ghastly, deathly pallor. Sophia, I can offer an explanation. This is a profound misunderstanding. Kindly resume your seat, I instructed, my voice imbued with an authority that could not be disregarded. Our discourse is far from concluded. The most impactful revelations are yet to be disclosed. Marcus transitioned the presentation. We shall now meticulously review the financial transactions. The screen transitioned to display the bank statements of the clandestine account that Warren and Leah had established, an account whose existence they fervently wished to perpetually conceal. As you can readily observe, Marcus elucidated, Mr. Warren has systematically transferred funds from the familial operational accounts into this personal account over the preceding 8 months, commencing with the early stages of the pregnancy. The aggregate sum amounts to $80,000, transferred in modest installments to circumvent any potential suspicion. That was designated for investments, Warren stammered, his voice reduced to a barely audible whisper. Investments? I echoed, my gaze drilling into him with laser-like intensity. Marcus, would you be so gracious as to illustrate precisely what they invested my funds in? What category of investments did they pursue? The subsequent slide presented a detailed breakdown of the expenditures. Rental payments for a lavish apartment situated in Santa Monica, the acquisition of high-end furnishings, designer apparel, dinners at exclusive, upscale dining establishments, overnight stays at luxurious hotels. You constructed a life together utilizing my funds, I thundered, releasing the pent-up fury I had contained for months, my voice quivering with righteous indignation. Leah started to sob uncontrollably, the infant she held shuddering. Mom, I can explain, I'm sorry. Don't you dare call me Mom, I retorted, my voice booming. You mean absolutely nothing to me. You're a complete traitor. I withdrew the creased piece of paper, the one Marcus had found amidst the hotel's refuse, and thrust it toward her. Ela, do you recognize this? That's your penmanship, isn't it? You penned it with that saccharine, innocent smile of yours. I began to recite the note aloud, each syllable a physical blow to her core. My dearest love, our liberation is imminent. Once our son arrives and the elder matriarch endorses the necessary documents, we shall openly cohabitate. I am utterly exhausted with feigning affection for her. She is so utterly guileless. Every word we utter, she readily accepts. Ethan abruptly rose, his gaze blazing with indignation. Our son? That infant belongs to my father. My own father has deceived me. Ethan, I interjected, that child is not your sibling. He is your half-brother. Leah and your father have been orchestrating this charade for over a year, this loathsome scheme. Warren finally erupted, his carefully constructed composure shattering. Very well. Indeed, Leah and I are devoted to each other, and that baby is mine. However, Sophia, you are an elder. I required someone youthful who could provide what you can no longer offer, someone who revitalizes my spirit. An elder? I inquired with a chilling calmness, my voice a low yet penetrating whisper. Marcus, would you be so kind as to demonstrate to this young gentleman precisely what this elder has prepared for him? I suspect he will find it exceedingly illuminating. The final image materialized on the projection surface. A profound shockwave rippled through the two conspirators. The meticulously prepared divorce decrees citing infidelity, a comprehensive inventory of all assets, and, most crucially, the court-issued eviction mandate for our residence and all associated properties. Warren, I stated, you have a period of 48 hours to vacate my domicile, taking all your possessions. Leah, your allotment is 24 hours to gather your personal effects and depart the premises. and both of you are granted 1 week to reimburse me the $8,000 you pilfered with accrued interest every single cent." "You cannot possibly do this," Warren shrieked, completely beside himself. "I am your spouse. I possess rights. I will initiate legal proceedings against you." "Rights?" I scoffed, emitting a genuinely liberating peal of laughter. "Marcus, please enlighten my former spouse regarding the extent of his so-called rights. I believe he is laboring under a misapprehension." "Mr. Warren," Marcus stated with unwavering resolve, "owing to the incontrovertible evidence of marital infidelity and financial misappropriation, you possess no rights whatsoever, not even entitlement to spousal support. In fact, Mrs. Albright could pursue criminal charges against you for fraud and larceny, which could culminate in a custodial sentence." Leah stood, still clutching the infant, her sobs now uncontrollable, her face crimson and contorted. "We cannot possibly leave. We have absolutely nowhere to go. This apartment we secured was merely a temporary arrangement. We are completely destitute." "That," I declared, my voice utterly devoid of emotion, "is no longer within my purview. It is the direct consequence of your deliberate choices." Warren regarded me with a potent blend of animosity and utter desolation, his eyes vacant. "Sophia, if you proceed with this, you will be utterly solitary. You will have no one remaining." I advanced until we were mere inches apart. "Warren, for 40 years I existed in solitude. Only now I shall cease to feign otherwise. I am liberated." Ethan drew nearer, embracing me with unwavering strength. "Mum, I am with you, always." "I am aware, my son," I responded, my eyes welling with tears of profound relief. "And now that we have identified our true adversaries, we can reconstruct our family unit upon the bedrock of integrity, founded on unwavering trust and mutual respect." Warren and Leah departed that very evening, carrying only the apparel they could manage. I observed their departure from my bedroom window, their figures burdened by suitcases and the infant who had been the catalyst for this entire calamity. They appeared as fragile and adrift as two performers who had forgotten their lines. But what they remained oblivious to, I mused to myself as I watched them vanish into a waiting taxi, was that this was merely the nascent stage of their tribulations. Their genuine recompense had yet to materialize. 6 months subsequent to that pivotal night, my existence had undergone a complete metamorphosis, albeit not in the manner Warren and Leah had anticipated. The initial days following their departure were markedly peculiar. The residence resonated with a profound stillness, a stark contrast to decades of pretense and deception. However, for the first time in 40 years, this silence emanated from a place of tranquility, not simmering tension, a peaceful void that created fertile ground for novel beginnings. Ethan initiated divorce proceedings against Leah without delay. Armed with the overwhelming and irrefutable evidence we possessed, the legal process was swift and uncomplicated, devoid of any entanglements. He was exonerated from any obligation to provide spousal support or to legally acknowledge the infant who was not biologically his. "Mum," he confided one afternoon as we sipped coffee on the sun-drenched patio, our gazes drifting towards the vibrant blooms in the garden. "I cannot fathom how I was so utterly oblivious. How could I have failed to perceive what was transpiring? The indications were omnipresent." "My dear son," I replied, "when we extend our trust to those we hold dear, we do not actively seek out betrayal. That does not render you blind. It signifies your inherent humanity. It establishes you as a person of integrity, unlike them." Yet the repercussions for Warren and Leah proved to be utterly calamitous, precisely as I had meticulously orchestrated. Deprived of access to my financial resources and divested of the income generated by my properties, they found themselves incapable of sustaining the opulent lifestyle they had cultivated through my assets. The ostentatious apartment they had leased in Santa Monica reached the conclusion of its term after merely 2 months, and they were unable to secure its renewal as their financial reserves had been irrevocably depleted. Marcus remained diligently informed of their movements. His reports were consistently comprehensive and remarkably precise. Mrs. Albright, he apprised me during one of our monthly consultations in my executive office, Warren is presently employed as an insurance salesman for a modest firm, and Leah is residing with her sister in a minuscule 2-bedroom dwelling located in the Bronx, which accommodates a total of 8 individuals. They are entirely reliant on the assistance of their familial network. The irony, I found, was exquisitely potent. After years of existing in a state of regal opulence at my expense, they were now compelled to confront the stark realities of their own limited means, the unforgiving harshness of existence devoid of my unwavering support. However, what afforded me the greatest satisfaction was the revelation of how their so-called profound love had ultimately dissolved. They engage in incessant disputes, Marcus informed me with a pronounced grin. Numerous neighbours have reported audible shrieks and acrimonious arguments occurring nightly. Warren directs accusations at Leah, blaming her for the total ruin of their fortunes due to her pregnancy, asserting that their meticulously crafted scheme has ultimately failed. Leah in turn lambasts him, accusing him of promising her an extravagant existence that he was fundamentally incapable of delivering, labeling him a complete and utter failure. It transpired that their connection, once unburdened by my financial backing for their romantic escapades in lavish hotels, had devolved into its true nature, a calculated alliance of mutual benefit predicated on avarice and manipulation, entirely devoid of genuine affection or endearment. Furthermore, Marcus added with a subtle smile, Warren is encountering significant difficulties in securing employment. His professional standing within the real estate sector has been irrevocably tarnished, as news has disseminated regarding his egregious betrayal of his wife, of 40 years with his own daughter-in-law. No reputable entity is inclined to engage in business dealings with an individual who has demonstrated such a profound lack of trustworthiness. His name has become anathema within the industry. The collective sentiment of the community had coalesced precisely as I had anticipated. In the United States, familial fidelity is regarded as an immutable tenet. An individual who transgresses against his spouse of 40 years by engaging in an illicit relationship with his own daughter-in-law is universally condemned as the basest of characters, utterly devoid of moral compass. Concurrently, my own life began to flourish in ways I could scarcely have envisioned. Unburdened by the financial drain of supporting Warren and his clandestine expenditures, my financial standing experienced an exponential expansion. The vast portfolio of properties, which I had meticulously managed in isolation for decades, now generated a substantial income stream that accrued solely to my benefit, entirely free from clandestine deductions or surreptitious embezzlements. I resolved to embark on an ambitious expansion of our enterprise. I acquired 2 additional prime commercial buildings in the heart of downtown Los Angeles and established a state-of-the-art property management firm, with Ethan formally designated as my business partner. The name of our company, Albright and Son Family Real Estate, was carefully chosen to imbue a sense of pride and a deep connection to our familial legacy. Within a mere 6 months, we had managed to triple the value of our real estate holdings. Ethan, it became abundantly clear, possessed the same astute business acumen as his grandfather, my own father, infusing our endeavours with fresh perspectives and an invigorating surge of energy. "Mom," he expressed one day as we meticulously reviewed the quarterly financial statements, noting an astonishing surge in profitability. I have never experienced such profound pride in our professional collaboration. Previously, the entire enterprise felt as though we were merely employees of Dad. However, now we are genuine partners, a cohesive unit forged in the crucible of mutual trust. Yet the most profound transformation was undoubtedly personal. At the venerable age of 65, for the very first time in my existence, I was living authentically for myself. Liberated from the suffocating constraints of a loveless marriage and the insidious manipulations of others, I enrolled in a series of rejuvenating yoga classes, embarked on extensive global travels, immersing myself in diverse and enriching cultures, and undertook a comprehensive renovation of our entire residence, meticulously imbuing it with my own distinct aesthetic preferences, replacing Warren's dated sensibilities with a vibrant palette of colours and contemporary furnishings. One afternoon, as I was diligently tending to my burgeoning collection of meticulously cultivated flowers in my newly revitalized garden, a veritable sanctuary of serenity, my telephone rang. It was Warren. "Sophia," he articulated, his voice a broken whisper, a mere phantom of its former resonance. "I must converse with you. I committed an egregious error." "What precisely do you desire, Warren?" I inquired, my tone cool and detached. I deeply regret my actions. What I did was profoundly wrong. Leah and I have concluded our association. She has departed with another gentleman, someone who possesses the capacity to adequately provide for her. I am left bereft, utterly alone, with no familial ties and no financial means. I remained silent for a protracted moment, allowing his words to fully register. His despair was palpable, yet any vestige of empathy I might have once possessed had entirely evaporated. "Sophia," he implored, his voice laced with desperation, "I am acutely aware that I do not merit your absolution, but might we consider a reconciliation? We are family, after all. We have shared our lives for a span of 40 years. Surely that holds some intrinsic value, all the shared memories we have accumulated." I emitted a resounding laugh, a genuine, uninhibited cascade of mirth that reverberated through the tranquil expanse of the garden. "Warren," I stated, my voice imbued with newfound authority, "you are indeed correct. 40 years represent a substantial duration. They are precisely equivalent to $3 million in real estate holdings, a flourishing enterprise, and the undeniable assurance that I will no longer be compelled to coexist with a purveyor of falsehoods. That is their intrinsic value." "But Sophia, I implore you," Warren pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. "Warren, you irrevocably chose Leah over the sanctity of our family. You elected to despoil me of my assets rather than accord me the dignity of respect. You opted to subject me to profound humiliation instead of cherishing me with genuine affection. Now, you must confront the inevitable consequences of your deliberate actions. Such is the immutable nature of life, and if I were to pledge that I have transformed, that I shall endeavour to be a more upright individual." "Warren," I declared, my voice firm and resolute, "I too have undergone a profound transformation. I am no longer the woman who contentedly accepts mere crumbs of respect. I am no longer the wife who habitually turns a blind eye to egregious acts of infidelity. I am Sophia Albright, a formidable businesswoman, an independent woman, and an individual who unequivocally values her own self-worth. And I am at this present juncture experiencing a level of happiness that surpasses all prior benchmarks." I concluded the call, and he never attempted to contact me again. I felt no remorse, only an overwhelming sense of peace. 3 months later, I received word from Marcus, that Warren had initiated legal proceedings against me, alleging abandonment of the marital domicile. His legal counsel, however, clarified that given his documented commission of adultery and his subsequent eviction as a direct result of his own transgressions, he possessed no valid legal standing. His lawsuit was summarily dismissed, representing yet another significant blow to his already battered ego. Today, precisely 1 year after that life-altering revelation at the hospital, my existence has been utterly redefined. Ethan has found solace and companionship in his marriage to a remarkable woman named Clara, who hails from a family distinguished by its unwavering work ethic and profound integrity. Clara possesses a disposition of kindness and intellect of considerable depth, and she consistently extends to me the utmost respect. When I recounted the entirety of my ordeal to them, Clara enveloped me in a warm embrace and conveyed, "Mrs. Albright, you embody the very archetype of womanhood I aspire to emulate as I mature into my later years, possessing strength, wisdom, and an unwavering spirit of independence. We are anticipating the arrival of my first legitimate grandchild next year, a precious baby girl who will bear my mother's cherished name, an infant conceived in the pure embrace of sincere love, entirely untainted by the insidious machinations of calculated manipulation." Leah made an attempt to reach out to me several months ago, ostensibly to present her perspective on the events and to express her profound remorse. I offered no response. Certain betrayals, I have come to understand, are fundamentally unforgivable. Warren, according to the most recent intelligence I have received, is currently residing in a modest apartment in Queens, subsisting on a series of temporary employment engagements, a mere shadow of his former grandeur. His purported profound affection for Leah endured for a mere 4 months following their forfeiture of access to my financial resources. Greed, it would appear, possessed a far more potent influence than any semblance of genuine tenderness. Do you comprehend what has most astonishingly surprised me throughout this entire profound experience? It is not the searing pain of betrayal, although it was undeniably devastating and inflicted wounds that have left indelible scars. It is not the exquisite satisfaction of retribution, although it was undeniably sweet and provided a profound sense of restored equilibrium. What has most profoundly astonished me is the discovery that at the age of 65, when I had resigned myself to the belief that my life's narrative was irrevocably etched in stone, I possessed the capacity to author an entirely new chapter, a resplendent and fiercely independent chronicle. I have come to the profound realization that it is never too late to assert one's right to self-defense, to unequivocally value one's own intrinsic worth, and to firmly declare an emphatic no more. There are numerous women who extend their communication to me via social media platforms, bravely sharing their own deeply personal narratives of familial betrayal, insidious exploitation, and profound disappointment. To each and every one of them, I offer the identical counsel. My dear sister, your inherent value far surpasses your current estimation, and the untapped power residing within you is immeasurable, exceeding your wildest imagination. If you are currently navigating circumstances that bear resemblance to my own, rest assured, you are not alone in this struggle. If you possess a husband who fails to recognize and appreciate your indispensable contributions, if you are subjected to the exploitative machinations of certain family members, if you find yourself feeling utterly invisible within the very fabric of your own existence, I implore you to draw strength and inspiration from my story. I was a woman of 65 years, convinced that I had irrevocably surpassed the age at which significant personal transformation was feasible. However, it has become evident that age merely bestows upon us enhanced wisdom, enabling us to make more judicious decisions and to firmly advocate for our own well-being and rights. Warren and Lyra harbored the misguided conviction that they could effortlessly dupe a naive and antiquated woman. What eluded their comprehension was the fundamental truth that this seemingly antiquated woman possessed 40 years of invaluable life experience, a substantial portfolio of $3 million in real estate assets, and the unyielding determination of an individual who had finally resolved to accord herself the highest degree of self-valuation, thereby forging her own path to profound happiness. The act of retribution was undoubtedly gratifying, but the embrace of true freedom proved to be utterly transformative. I now navigate each day with the profound certainty that every decision I make is unequivocally my own. Every dollar I expend is a testament to my autonomy. Every fleeting moment of happiness is a genuine and unadulterated experience. And every night, as I recline in my own bed, within the sanctuary of my own home, surrounded by objects that resonate with my personal narrative, I slumber with a profound sense of peace, knowing that I am no longer compelled to inhabit the persona of someone I am not, merely to appease individuals who demonstrably did not merit my presence or my affections. That, my dear sisters, represents the ultimate triumph. What course of action would you adopt were you to find yourself in my circumstances? Have you encountered analogous experiences? Kindly share your narratives in the comment section below. At times, the initial and most crucial step toward liberation is the simple and profound realization that you unequivocally deserve it.